We're fortunate to have joining us here on Bottom Line this week a colleague and friend from my days at the North Carolina Chamber, Bob Morgan, the president of the Charlotte Chamber. And also joining him are David Longo, president and CEO of CBI, and Irene Vogelsong, practice area leader and director of interior design at Perkins & Will, both members of the executive committee of the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce. Bob, thanks for being on Bottom Line.
Good to be with you, Joe.
Give us an update. What's the state of the business community in Charlotte?
Joe, it's a story of growth. We saw in 2016 we added about 1,500 more jobs than we had added in 15, notwithstanding the challenges of HB2 that we all dealt with. HB2 slowed us down, did not shut us down. Through the second quarter of this year, we've seen 6,700 jobs announced already. That's 1,800 more than in the first two quarters of last year. That growth is coming from a variety of sectors, the financial services sector in particular. Banks continue to grow employment. The insurance sector continues to grow. We've got exciting things coming up, like in 2 weeks, the PGA Championship, where you're going to see exposure. This will rate up there like the Democratic National Convention or the Panthers hosting the NFC Championship in terms of the exposure. Positive exposure. We heard it during the British Open, the potential for Jordan Spieth to make history in Charlotte. All eyes are in the golf world internationally or upon Charlotte. That just helps us in selling our city.
Well, one of the things we know about Charlotte is an increasing internationalization of the business community present. How has that impacted your business?
For us, it's been wonderful, tremendous. Perkins & Will, we're a global architecture and design firm, so our clients are global clients, and the more global clients that we can attract here in Charlotte, North Carolina, sets us for a great partnership across the globe, really.
And David, what makes Charlotte a desirable place for your business?
Just the growth in the market, the public-private partnership that exists in the market is great. That's why I think most businesses come here. The lack of, or the lower amount of regulation, lower taxes, all the things that have always made Charlotte a great community continues to be the case. So I think we just need to continue to maintain those things and not forget what's made us great in the past.
Well, and Bob, you mentioned professional sports, a part of the business community in Charlotte. The Panthers there's some talk about perhaps professional soccer coming here. What is the dynamic of having professional athletics in the city? What does that do to build the business reputation of Charlotte?
Well, it creates exposure that puts us on the map. In the case of soccer, we see it as a way to continue to attract young people and globals, or those born outside the United States.
Which
Soccer
is
their sport. I would like to think it's great that both Charlotte and Raleigh are competing for an MLS franchise. Let's don't forget, our state enjoys the presence of the Carolina Panthers, the NBA Hornets. You've got professional hockey right here in Charlotte, and we're going to have to compete against each other and others over soccer, but we're also going to have to continue to compete to retain some of the sports franchises that we have, and so that'll be an ongoing challenge in the years ahead.
Well, one of the things you mentioned early on was a discussion of House Bill 2. We sort of resolved that now at the statewide level, but the dynamics of politics in a big city are always a little different than the state they occupy. What is the political dimension of the business community in Charlotte? How is it different than it's been historically, and what is it we need to understand better about the politics of Charlotte as it occupies a place in North Carolina?
Well, I for one think that anything that we can do to increase company interest in our city is going to be great for economic development and for the rest of our companies in Charlotte, North Carolina. So any type of policy that could potentially draw the wrong type of attention to our city is obviously not good business for us.
Yeah, I would say I think we need to continue to focus on the things that made us great, and again, that comes back to that public-private partnership that we've always had. I think that creating an opportunity for focusing on education, focusing on upward mobility of our community is very important to us. Charlotte has an amazing spirit of can-do attitude and really that underdog city that has grown well beyond its capabilities. And so I think that we just need to continue to focus on those things because that will continue to be our success. I don't think we have to reinvent. I think we have to be who we've always been.
Joe, the rural versus urban dynamic is real. With every election, Charlotte tends to get more blue. The state has gotten more red. We can't let it be an either or of one versus the other. We have to do a better job of working with those in our region. A large part of the General Assembly, a significant part of the General Assembly is part of the Charlotte region. Many of those folks come from counties that are considered rural. We have to do a better job of helping the rest of the state to understand that what's good for Charlotte is not bad for the rest of the state, or vice versa. And we all have to be a part of, we have our own unique challenges and opportunities. The rural parts of the state have their own. There is a partisan difference. We just have to remind ourselves and each other, we're all in it together. This is all for North Carolina. It's not easy to do, but it can be done, and we need good leadership, and the business community wants to play a role in helping to create the dialogue so that we can move forward as one state, not a divided state.
Well, Bob, you raise a valuable point there. There is a historical perspective that Charlotte was an antagonist to the rest of the state, some sense of a great state of Mecklenburg. It only occupied North Carolina because it was required to geographically. But the truth is, Charlotte is the business capital of North Carolina, and a significant amount of the overall economic success of the state has come as a result of the economic dynamic of not just Charlotte, but the Charlotte region. What is it that other state leaders need to know about the Charlotte story, the future, the vision that you have for the economic success you want in Charlotte? What is it that the average legislator who doesn't represent a district in adjoining Charlotte needs to know about your story there in Charlotte? David?
I think it's important to understand, again, what's made Charlotte really strong. I think there are different dynamics in the city versus the urban areas or the rural areas, but I think they all grow from each other. I think they just need to spend time with each other. I think people need to set aside their differences and think what's right for the whole state versus just thinking what's right for my area. Because if you think about this, the growth of the state alone, it's been tremendous, not just in the cities, but also in the rural areas. You go to Boone, for example, where two of my three children went to school. You went to Boone in 1993, it was very small. Today, for Boone, it's booming, it's growing, and so they're benefiting from the growth of the cities. And I think we have to just understand that we coexist together and we need each other.
Irene, what would be your statement to non-Charlotteans about why Charlotte's so important?
Charlotte is very important because we are becoming, as you mentioned before, a more global city. And with globalization comes a lot of inclusion. And inclusivity is something that we want to make sure that the business community out there understands. We are an inclusive community in Charlotte, and businesses will thrive because of it. It opens up a whole diverse workforce, which, one of the struggles that we have is in attracting and retaining talent. And anything that we can do to increase the workforce in Charlotte and the surrounding area to give us all opportunities to be able to hire quality people, it's all a plus for business.
Well, Bob, I'll give you the final word here. Being a Charlotte Chamber executive is undoubtedly a challenge. You have such diversity among your membership, but in the final few seconds we have, what's the story? What's the elevator speech you have as the leader of the Charlotte Chamber about why Charlotte's great?
One of the fastest growing cities in America. It's a great place to live, great place to run a business. The cost is 95% of the national average. The workforce is large, it's growing, increasingly young, global, skilled, and connectability for companies. You can connect through the Charlotte Airport to virtually every major market in North America, to most of the major European destinations and others. You can run a business and do well in Charlotte. You can have a high quality of life. We're a story of growth, and that growth is going to continue.